For the first time in, okay, I got to look this up, Tim. I got to look this up.
We're off to a good start here.
There's an amount of days here, all right? First time in 1,029 days, somebody other than Max Verstappen is the lead driver in the Drivers' Championship. And, of course, it had to be a McLaren driver. It had to be a McLaren driver. And let's just say this, Miami Grand Prix 2022 was the last time, going into that Grand Prix, was the last time somebody else led in the Drivers' Championship.
Charles Leclerc?
Charles Leclerc. That's right. Because he had that great start in 2022, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. And then, strategy and Mattia Binotto got fired and, it's kind of went downhill.
Yeah, and Leclerc made some mistakes too, so.
Yeah. Yeah. But
everything.
People tend to totally blame Mattia for that. I'm like, well, there was some other stuff. That's a little bit of revisionist history. But yeah. Tim, nailing the apex. It's our very first post-race show of the year, and it was a hell of a race, starting with the conditions. Now, when you're a race driver, from what I understand, you either want it completely dry or completely wet.
Yeah.
What we got all weekend was the in-between. And why is that such a problem?
Well, I mean, because you get the drying line, and then all of a sudden, if it starts to get wet again, then your strategy gets thrown off, and then the strategy back at home base, they have to, retool everything on the fly. It makes things very difficult for obviously the entire team, but for the driver itself, I mean, changing track conditions, you kind of lose your reference points. You have to recalibrate everything while you're racing other competitors. I think the mentality of it is, you open up the curtains on Sunday morning and you see that it's raining. Mentally, you're kind of like, dang.
Yeah.
But a big part of your mentality has to shift, and you have to be like, right on, this is what I wanted, right? Because that'll throw your competitors off if you start talking about it when you're together and you believe it.
Right.
Because that's such a huge mental shift for a driver to have. I think Lando was asked something along the lines of you looked out on Sunday morning and you saw that there was rain, what did you think? And he didn't really give them the answer, but that's kind of your mentality, right? You have to embrace wet weather, because if you don't, it'll defeat you. And the reason I say that is because when you were trying to concentrate for 90 minutes or 2 hours, your singular focus can shift quite easily, and you have to be so concentrated during wet weather racing. The focus just goes right up, and it's it can be a mental grind just to stay locked in.
Yes.
Right? Because there's no breaks, right, Adam? In hockey, football, basketball, you go sit on the bench, you could take a breather for 5 minutes, whatever, until the next shift. You have to stay locked in for the entire thing, because if you don't, you're going to crash the car, obviously, right?
Right.
And also, I mean, like we saw, if you want to, we can get right into it with the opening formation lap. I mean, Isaac Hadjar just going right into the barriers.
Yeah.
Right?
So explain to me, because essentially what my base level understanding of it is that Isaac, at a certain gear, the turbo kicks in.
Yes.
And so when he was going through that, I believe it was an S curve, right? It's just a chicane.
Turn 1 and 2.
He was gearing up, and as a rookie driver, there's a huge difference between F2 and F1 because of those hybrid turbos.
Yeah.
The turbo kicked in, his back tire spun, and he spun around. Is that what happened?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, there's also a lot of white lines that are down there. I mean, quick point about the white lines, because I mean, this the hardcores will know, but people who are new to Formula One they won't. So when you go out on your city street and you see that you have the yellow painted line, you have white painted lines, keep you in your lane, all that kind of good stuff. What happens is that kind of clogs up the pavement, if that makes any sense. It kind of clogs up the asphalt or the concrete or whatever it is that you're using, and there's no way of embedding tire rubber into it, which means that there's no grip. It's literally
doesn't get sticky.
It doesn't get sticky, so it's literally slick. It's like ice. So if you touch that in the wet with with an intermediate tire or a wet tire, you're gone. Just forget about it. So those are also little things you have to like look out for while you're, going 300 kph, right? Like the more downforce, the faster the car starts going, the more downforce starts being put onto the car. You don't have to worry about it too much, but when you're in turns like 1, 2, slower corners, even like a fourth gear corner, you have to really pay attention to where all the white lines are, and you have to make sure that you're staying somewhat away from them. Right. The other part of all of it, Adam, is like you said, right? The turbo, the torque, how much torque goes through the rear tire when you accelerate. So remember when we were playing the sim, and I said to you, like, okay, Adam, like when you go to push the gas pedal, I'm like, don't like hammer on it, because you're driving something that has 1,000 horsepower. It has a turbo and it has a ton of torque. Mm-hmm. So if you mash that gas pedal, you're just going to spin the rear wheels out and you're going to spin around, because there's not enough front grip on the car to hold the thing in place. And there's just so much power and energy going through the rear of the car.
Right.
You have to be like super, super smooth with it. So as smooth as you were starting to get with the sim, right, times that by 1,000 for the wet.
Right.
And it's literally like you got to feather things on. You have to be super gentle with it while you're getting knocked around inside the cockpit. You have to really try and like hold your foot at a certain angle while you're getting pressed and pushed around, right? To just squeeze it on really slow until you actually start to feel this car grip up, and then you can
And that's what these drivers are going through. That's why they're all wearing knee pads. We saw at the end of the race, everybody's pulling their knee pads off. With Isaac Hadjar, though, he'd had such a great quali, right? You mentioned it in your post-quali video, which was awesome, by the way, Tim.
Yeah, thanks.
And qualifying 11th as a rookie, he's ahead of basically everybody on the grid, except for, I think, one person. And I think, everybody was like, wow, this is great. And you could tell there was excitement. And then, of course, there's this spinoff on a formation lap. And it is a combination of painful, embarrassing for the driver, and so much disappointment, because every race in your life, every time you've stepped in a car, it's led to this moment. Yeah. And for that to be taken away from him, you can understand why he was emotional. And there were a couple different responses to that, Tim. Number one, Lewis Hamilton's father, Anthony, giving him a hug. Obviously, Isaac grew up a huge Lewis Hamilton fan. So it was kind of neat to see them take a selfie together this weekend. And then there's that selfie of them 6 or 7 years ago when Isaac's just a kid. So Anthony Hamilton gave him a hug and said, it's going to be all right. And, don't worry. Because again, let's not forget, he qualified 11th. That's really good.
Really good.
And then secondly, you get Helmut Marko's reaction, who said, he was crying and that was a bit embarrassing. And I don't know if that's an awkward Austrian translation or if that's how Helmut feels. I tend to lean to the latter. But, dealing with a sport like hockey where there's multiple languages spoken, I do know there's a language barrier. Helmut can be a little tough. What I really liked was Christian Horner's response, which is, hey, man, these things happen. He's a rookie. And obviously you can make that mistake once. You can't do it again. It's Formula One. But what is your reaction to him? And then later on to Jack Doohan, and then later on, well, not much later, Carlos Sainz.
Yeah. I think as a driver, I can't speak for, what Hadjar's mental state was when he got out of the car. I mean, he clearly looked upset.
Yeah.
I think any one of us would have been, only because of, like you had mentioned, Adam, sort of just how hard you work to get there. You don't get too many shots at this, so you really have to limit mistakes. You have to be on every single time. Like I said about other sports, you cannot take a break. There are no breaks in racing. There are none. You're always working it. You're always focused on it. And to have it end before it even began is pretty devastating. I'd be pretty broken up about it too. I think the stuff with Anthony Hamilton was great. I really enjoyed seeing that. That was nice to see, and that's going to help. I mean, he's such a big Lewis Hamilton fan. When you get his dad coming up to you, giving you sort of a pep talk, I mean, that will help. He will bounce back from this. I hope so too. I mean, he actually showed a lot of promise in that qualifying. That was very impressive. I think if he had have got a couple things right more on his push lap, I think he could have knocked himself into Q3. Like he looked really, really good this weekend for a rookie. As for Jack Doohan, same sort of thing, white lines, right? Just how much do you modulate that gas pedal and then shifting gears through it too? Like that's a very challenging thing. It's an expensive crash for sure.
Yep.
Oliver, it was interesting. I heard from Oliver Oakes at the end of it. I think the mentality from him, like Oliver Oakes, was that Jack had a really good weekend. He did. I would agree with that statement.
I think so too.
I thought he had a very good debut. Always hard at your home race. So much pressure you put on yourself to perform. And I thought he kept pace with Pierre Gasly quite nicely. If Lewis didn't get that spin, I mean, who's to say that Jack doesn't get himself into Q3? It kind of looked like he was headed that way, right? And so that would have been pretty impressive. So it's a bit of a shame how that ended for Jack. But really tricky conditions. I think I said in the qualifying pod, Adam, watch out for the rookies, because this is going to be, if it rains, it's going to be extremely challenging for them.
Well, and the attrition rate was unbelievable.
Oh, man.
And we'll talk about that in our rookie report a little bit later. But I think, looking at what happened to Doohan, look what happened to Carlos Sainz. I mean, a veteran driver, multiple Grand Prix winner. And for Carlos Sainz to go down like that, which is a bummer, because before this weekend started, James Vowles told Sky Sports, my goal is to get both cars into Q1. And he did it. And they looked good. And we'll talk about Alex Albon's performance in a bit here. But for Carlos Sainz in his first race with Williams, that's frustrating too. And it goes to show it ain't just the rookies that are affected by this.
Yeah. No, it's clearly like just all those white lines. It's just those mistakes. I mean, I think it probably worked out pretty good that actually Carlos crashed, because he ended up playing a pretty big factor for the team later for Alex. So that was quite interesting to hear. I think the positive thing is, Adam, is that Williams they look very competitive. That car is a legit competitor. Like they're going to be there. They may not be there for wins, but they're going to be there for potential podiums, like we were talking about after Bahrain. Like Bahrain, I think for James, this was reaffirming that they actually have a really good car for this season. I think that's what James's basic mentality was at the end of this one, was taking in the fact that they were competitive in Bahrain. That was pure performance. They were competitive in a hot, dry sessions in Melbourne, and they were competitive in cooler, wet conditions in Melbourne. So I think, Adam, all of that plays to this car actually being pretty decent.
Right. And I think you look at the you look at what the other thing James said. He's like, last year we basically spent every team debrief saying, how do we get to next weekend? And he said this year we're going to be able to say, how do we find performance? What do we need to do? What can we tweak? What can we adjust? What can we work with? Which I think is very exciting for Williams. You could see the brand start to come back to life. And obviously where Alex Albon finished, and again, we'll get to that in a second, really kind of showed that. So it'll be great when we get both cars finishing a race, but not a bad start for them either. Now, there was something that I think plagued McLaren and plagued specifically Lando Norris last year, and that's race starts. You get how many formation laps and then how many laps under safety car. And really, essentially, this race is a rolling start. And those can be a problem for people that are not the best starters because of just the speed at which you have to get up to speed in the wet in this particular incident, right? But but this time, Lando seemed to have it pretty clean. Every time they started or restarted that race, Lando was away clean, and so was Oscar. But I think Lando was the one where the focus was. What do you think that was in terms of change? Do you think that's something he worked on? Is the car better? Because McLaren seemed to have A, the best car, but B, the best starts.
Yeah, I think it was a bit of both, Adam. I think the car's a little better in the takeoff portion. Like I think they were losing, if I remember correctly, during their launch phase last year, they were losing they were losing out when they were in the second phase, like second gear. So when Lando would shift into second, they were losing out in that phase somewhere, and that was one issue. The other issue was probably maybe Lando not reacting quickly enough, but I still think it was a bit of both. I don't think it wasn't necessarily all on Lando Norris. I think the team had to take some of the blame for that one too. This year, yeah, it was the wet, so it's a little harder to tell if the car's a little better at starts. I think Lando reacted nicely. Max was the one who, again, he was shot out of a friggin' cannon.
Unbelievable all day. Unbelievable.
He looked great off the starts, man. And the pass around Oscar Piastri to take P2 around the outside at turn 2 in the wet. My God,
He's so good. He's so good.
Amazing. But I think Lando's worked on these starts throughout the off season for sure. It does look like it. So
yeah, okay, and obviously, we're going to jump around the race a little bit here, but when you talk about the fight, the announcers said it. I think everybody's thinking it. It feels like both McLaren drivers versus Max Verstappen this year. Like that's how it feels. Wow. Like this is going to kind of go, at least in the early going.
When you take a look at the early going, like if you look at the first 3 races, right? Because I think like when we get to Bahrain, I don't think McLaren's going to be as competitive there.
Right.
They'll probably be competitive in Saudi Arabia. I think McLaren will definitely be competitive in China and Japan, because I think those are tracks that really suit their car.
Right.
Judging by what we saw in Australia and the high speed stuff. But that doesn't mean that Red Bull's not going to be there. I mean, like Max, when they found the balance on that car, Max was Max.
Yeah, he was. He's amazing. You know who wasn't great was Liam Lawson. And in certain cases, he was bad. Now, I know he missed out on one of the free practice sessions, but he was not great in qualifying. And during the race, before he ultimately spun out Tim, he was sometimes full seconds back of Max at his pace. Yeah. What do you think? What do you attribute that to? Because listen, there was a lot of blowback about Liam Lawson. Like, you got to remember, last year this guy comes into the car for Daniel Ricciardo, and then he flips off Sergio Perez in one of the races. Yeah. And then he's uber confident guy. This is as close to home as he's going to be for a Grand Prix, and he just doesn't perform. What was it? What happened?
I don't think he was that comfortable with how the car was set up. Like, he didn't look comfortable. It didn't look like he could. I mean, you're never comfortable in a race car, but like there's points where you kind of can get a little more comfortable. It's a very stressful environment.
Yes, of course,
extremely stressful. But I don't think he could find a spot where he could really push the car and take it to a limit. I think he struggled trying to find that. And that looked more setup based, but again, they were experimenting with front wings and they were experimenting with different parts on his car compared to Verstappen's car. So it was a little back and forth. Never really looked like he was able to gel with the car. And that's obviously going to what makes you like a second and a half, whatever, off of your teammate. So, that's an issue for sure. I think when he starts getting to tracks that he knows, I think things will get a little easier. But I think the first few races here, Adam, could be a challenge. Like when he gets to Japan, like I think he knows Suzuka quite well from Super Formula days. And I'm not too sure about the track in China. That may be a bit of an outlier, but not a great first race weekend for Liam Lawson for sure. I mean, ending in a crash as well it's definitely a challenging weekend for him. So we'll have to see how it goes. Can't just judge him off of one race. It's the same thing we say with the other rookies, even though I don't think Liam Lawson is a rookie, but it's the same thing, right? He's never been to this track, never competed on it. So
how long though does he get? Right? How long does he get?
Well, that's the thing. Like if Yuki Tsunoda keeps doing what he's doing, there is going to be a very strong push from behind the scenes to put Yuki with Max.
Right. And Yuki obviously finished 12th yesterday, but had a great qualifying. I think there were some strategy issues and that sort of
definitely.
thing.
Yeah, definitely strategy.
Not on
racing
Yuki.
bulls. That's definitely not on Tsunoda because, the Ferraris tried to roll the dice on the same strategy call and it didn't work too well. So
no, it didn't. Well, we got to talk Ferrari strategy in a sec here. I want to talk a little bit about just the beyond the top three here, because Oscar Piastri could have had second place, and maybe he gets third place if maybe Max passes him, he gets third place, but he makes a mistake late in the race. It puts him off track. Now he's able to climb back into ninth, which is extremely impressive, but that's probably 16 less points than he thought he was going to get at that point. What do you say about the Oscar situation? Because it really was just, Lando went off in the same spot, but Lando was able to corral the car. Yeah. What happened?
It's heartbreaking, Adam.
Yeah. No kidding.
It was pretty devastating, right? Like, I felt really bad for that guy. He was he was faster than Lando.
Yeah.
Like he was. That's a fact. And the team orders thing, we got to talk about that, Adam. And I think...
well, didn't they say they were free to go racing and Oscar could pass Lando?
That was like after he had lost 2 seconds from being rattled from the team telling him not to pass him. Like, come on. What are we doing? We're supposed to be racing here, right? Like, I get that there is a strategy that, you want to get past the lap cars and you want to get some distance between yourself and Max before you start, allowing your two drivers to go at each other. But, if I'm Oscar in that moment, I'm pulling the radio thing out, being like, "Oh yeah, sorry, I can't hear you. Don't know where you went."
Yes.
You can bet that Mark Webber after that race, Adam, went in and had. I think he probably went in and had a conversation with the McLaren brass. For sure.
You think so?
Oh yeah, I would. If I'm managing Oscar Piastri, we all know how talented that kid is. If I'm managing him, 100% I'm going in and sticking up for my driver. Being like, what are we doing?
Yeah. And he was faster than Lando in that situation. Do you just let him pass?
You got to let them. I know from McLaren's perspective, I think you're trying to win a Constructors' Championship.
Yep.
You already know you can probably win this year's Drivers' Championship. It's going to take a lot of work. Yeah, because it's not going to come easy. They're going to have other teams. Ferrari, we didn't see their true pace. That car's a lot faster than what we saw. Mercedes is going to be in this for sure, and so is Red Bull. So you've got 4 teams already. So I think for them, the mentality is like, we'll let them fight when we get some safe distance on our competitors behind, because they're going to lose time when they start fighting each other, and everybody else is going to catch up.
Right. Which
is probably what would happen. Mm-hmm. But I think as a driver, you're not thinking about that. You're definitely not thinking about that. It's Oscar Piastri in his home race. Like, you're thinking about winning, man. Like, that's what you're doing. You're not thinking about Max behind you, George Russell behind him.
Yeah.
So that was a bit unfortunate, I thought, because I think when he was given that call, he dropped a wheel in turn 4 or 5? I think it was turn 6. Mm-hmm. It was basically where Fernando went off and crashed. It was there. He had lost time there because he dropped a wheel. I think he did that either because he was frustrated with the message that he had gotten, like, yo, no racing right now. And then when he dropped that wheel, they had already opened up enough of a distance where they were like, okay, you guys can fight now. So... But they've been given rules, Adam. Do
we know what the rules are?
No contact, right? That's it. Just fair, clean racing. You have to give each other space.
Okay.
And I would do with like Toto Wolff. Here's how you solve, I think, that issue where it's like, you do what Toto Wolff did to Hamilton and Rosberg. Put a new contract in front of them and just be like, you guys crash, you're paying for it.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that's right. He did do that.
Brilliant move, by the way. That's how you stop the two guys from like really colliding.
Right.
Like, Why not? I would do that. That's great. That's such a smart thing to do. And so, yeah, those two are going to be going at it this season, Adam. That's that pairing. I think they have the mutual respect for each other, which is good.
Yeah.
I think
they both seem like reasonable people, but are fierce competitors.
Yeah, they do. I think Lando can race fairly, and I think Oscar can as well.
Can Max?
Yeah, that's we'll find out,
right? Because that's their main competitor. That guy races people hard.
Adam, I liked when Oscar put the car into reverse and literally just let the wheels spin until he got some traction.
Yes.
So he was just sitting there for like minutes, spinning and spinning until it finally started
down a
to
lap
get
at one point. Tim, down a lap.
But then once he got back onto the track, Adam, you see all the fans are like cheering for him and stuff. I thought that was awesome.
It was great. It was great. A very Aussie grit of him. And I want to say,
great.
Jeremy Clarkson said that, and I don't know what the context of this is. Jeremy Clarkson was tweeting last night about how he had taught Oscar to reverse a F1 car. Is that true? What's the deal there?
Okay, so have you ever seen the show Clarkson Farm?
Yes, I've seen pieces of it, but I haven't seen the full episode.
I watch it. It's a great show. He taught him how to reverse a tractor because Oscar couldn't park this tractor that had a load on the back of it, if I remember correctly.
Oh.
Like how to actually like reverse it and like
with a trailer.
With the trailer.
Yeah, okay.
So that's why he's like, I taught him how to reverse, so that's how he knows how to reverse the F1 car.
I love that. Wait.
Adam, what did you think of his pass on Lewis Hamilton?
I thought it was amazing. And it was high speed. Do you not think so? Like clean.
Incredible pass.
You didn't like terrible pass?
I love it. No, that's one of the best passes I've seen in a long time, man.
That was, to me, that was nails. Like, you got to have ice in your veins to pull that off. Not because, you know what, Lewis Hamilton has always been, well, maybe not in his younger years, but he's fair driver.
Yeah, he's clean.
He's not gonna swing back.
I don't know. He did do a little.
There was a little, but like not. But Oscar just sort of blew by him in the cleanest way possible. When they showed that in cockpit cam, I was like, wow, it was just, he was gone.
I stood up. I didn't see that coming because they didn't show it live.
No, exactly.
They showed the replay of it, and I was like, what are we seeing here, right? Like, and I was like, oh, no, he's not going to. I'm like, oh, no. I had to stand up, and I was like, oh, my God.
Yeah, it was great. And, I mean, obviously, he does grab a couple of points, which is key because right now I'm looking at the 2025 team standings, and we got McLaren Mercedes at 27 points, and Mercedes, the home team Mercedes, at 27 points. And that is because of a relatively issue-free drive from George Russell. Just qualified well, raced well, let things play out outside of him.
Chaos around him.
Chaos, and he's like, I'm not going to pass anyone. I'm not going to get passed by anyone. I am just going to race my race. Third place, and Kimi Antonelli, the exact opposite, starts in 16th, goes to 4th, then there's a penalty, drops him to 5th, then the penalty's rescinded, back to 4th. He is the second youngest driver of all time, outside of Max Verstappen, to score points in a Formula One race, which is unbelievable. What a start for Mercedes.
Oh, amazing. I think that George just has this way of avoiding chaos.
Just chill, man. Just calm. I love it.
I can't believe how he didn't get caught up in any of it.
Yeah.
It was, and Kimi Antonelli, like, had a rough qualifying.
Yeah, he did.
Let's be honest. And had an incredible race. Like, incredible race, man. What a start from a rookie. Like, I was thinking last night, I'm like, what other rookie has kind of had a start to a season like that? And I'm like, well, Lewis, for sure. And I was like, Jacques Villeneuve would be the other one.
Oh,
I can think
interesting.
Of. And then Antonelli. Like, that was a really good drive, man. That's a good car, first. But he had some really impressive passes. He had a nice one on, if I remember correctly, I think it was Alex. Yeah, it was Alex. It was for 4th place. Passed Alex Albon for 4th place. And then after the race, obviously Antonelli had his 5-second time penalty.
Mm-hmm.
And Mercedes actually protested it. So they went back to the FIA with
and that's
new
the
video.
unsafe release penalty.
That's the unsafe release penalty. You got 5 seconds for that. And then demoted to 5th at the end, and then he got reinstated to 4th. He got it back. So for those of you who stayed up late, watched the race, went to bed, this was all happening while you were sleeping. On the Eastern time, was that Antonelli and Mercedes actually took new video footage to the FIA, showing them that it wasn't an unsafe release and all of this other kind of stuff. It was just roll hoop camera and helicopter camera that they used to kind of show it, to prove the evidence. And like that is what was so impressive with not only Antonelli's performance, but I think also Mercedes, like putting that video footage together like that, man, like within an instant. And he was able to get back 4th place, which was great. So they had George P3 and Antonelli P4. It was
amazing. What a result.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more pace in that Mercedes, Adam. Like I think they just need to figure out how McLaren is what McLaren's doing with their tires, helping them stay as cool as possible before they need to use them, and then extending the life of them and how they're able to get the performance out of the tire for as long as they can. Like that's what they got to learn next. And they will. I mean, they'll figure that out. But Mercedes is definitely in this thing. Wow. I think George will definitely be in this championship battle at some point. He's going to play a factor for sure.
That's the best result of the best starting race of the George Russell era, and I think it speaks to a renewed Mercedes team that Lewis was amazing there, and they had a great history together. But the last couple of years had fallen a bit. You could tell there was frustration. Sometimes partnerships get stale, and I feel like that one did. Now, if we move to Ferrari, where Lewis went. You'll laugh to know that Sauber has more world championship points currently than Ferrari does. Sauber has 6 points. Ferrari has 5. So Mattia Binotto is laughing this morning. But also Sauber had 4 points total all of last year. Mm-hmm. And they got 2 more world championship points now than they ever did last year. Yep. Obviously, there's some rain a part of that. Gabriel Bortoleto, another guy that spun off, didn't finish the race, but had a good race, good race going. Yep. And probably could have finished in points if he'd kept going. Mm-hmm. So much for being a B driver. Let's talk about Nico Hülkenberg, and then let's talk about Ferrari. So Nico, again, seems like the kind of guy, kind of like with George Russell, like I'm going to race my own race, and I'm going to let the chaos kind of ensue around me, and I'm just going to be solid as a rock. That's why they got this guy.
Yeah, 100%, man. Great strategy from Sauber, too. Like, that's sort of what put Hülkenberg in the position to get the points.
Yep.
And he admitted that, but also he has to take some of the credit for making sure that he's in the right place at the right time to capitalize on it. So two things playing there. I think Hülkenberg really likes Bortoleto. Like he thinks Bortoleto's like the real deal.
The real deal. Okay, he's legit.
Yeah, like this kid's like really, really good. Because he threw everything at Bortoleto threw everything at Hülkenberg this weekend that Hülkenberg can handle, and Bortoleto looked really fast, man, really fast. So that's a car that's got some pace. We don't know how much. They could be one of those teams that just sits on the fringe of getting points every weekend, by the looks of it.
Which is a huge improvement.
Yeah, it's a massive improvement from where they were last year. Holy jeez.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why they got Nico Hülkenberg, man, for races like this, where it's just like you need that steady hand who's just going to be consistent. He'll be there to get those points if you set him up for it. He's not going to be super flashy, but he'll get the job done when you need him to get the job done. And yeah, it's a great signing. I'm glad that he's there. I think as well as I watched Bortoleto throughout the weekend. Yeah, that kid's definitely got something. Really weird how the rear suspension sort of failed on the Sauber when he had his crash. So I'm not too sure why that happened just yet. Haven't found that out. But that was quite strange. He was battling some brake issues too throughout the race, which made Bortoleto's performance even more impressive in my opinion. But yeah, man, that's pretty funny that Sauber ended up, ahead of Ferrari. Like
Crazy. And
the
Tim,
Sauber powered Ferrari.
well, exactly.
Sauber,
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm looking at it right now. It says, Sauber Ferrari, and there's Haas Ferrari too. Okay, so Ferrari was at one point leading this race, and it was when Lando went to pit. Lewis was leading. Charles was up there with Lewis, and you thought, oh man, is Ferrari going to sneak in and just take all the points today?
Yeah.
And they could have. So, Tim, let's walk through what happened, because Lando goes off to change tires. Why does Lando go off to change tires?
Well, I mean, obviously he goes off, right, Adam?
Yeah.
So Oscar and him go off, and that's one of those, because we didn't really I didn't touch on it enough, I think, before. So the rain's starting to come in, right? But the teams don't know where it's going to hit or what time exactly it's going to hit.
Mm-hmm.
But when it does, like both drivers in Norris and Piastri, you kind of have to make a split-second decision on your braking, like when you're going to slow the car down, because you're coming up to something at such a rapid rate, and you haven't hit the rain yet. But as soon as you do, I mean, that is a judgment call of meters, like 10 meters at a rate of 300 kilometers an hour. And so I thought both of them did well not to crash the cars.
Yep, they did.
I thought both of them did really well to keep it out of the wall. But for Lando, I thought he did a good job of not going off super far into the gravel and really costing him time and damage to the car. And instead of continuing, he did the right thing, man. Like, smart move by Lando Norris to just peel right into pit lane.
Yeah.
That's the race winning move.
So should Ferrari have stayed out with their tires the way that they were? No. So what would you have done differently? Because the strategy cost a lot of points.
Yeah, Adam, you got to bring him in, right? Like, if Lewis is on the radio telling you, hey, it's wet out here, you got to listen to him. You got to bring him in. And that's, maybe Lewis needs to be a little more demanding in that moment, but maybe also Ferrari should have thought about this a little more. I think that was a strategy miscue. But again, it's going to happen, right? Ferrari's not the only one that did it. No. There are other teams who did it as well. And that is a really tough strategy call to make. It's a 50-50, right? It's like you're literally rolling the dice at that moment. And so as much as everybody online is making fun of Ferrari and making fun of strategy calls and making fun of the radio messages between Lewis and Ricardo Adami, who is Lewis's engineer, you guys don't understand the challenges in the moment that these teams are having to make and the decisions that they are having to make. It's not easy, right? No. This is really, really difficult. So probably should have brought Lewis in a little sooner. Mm-hmm. Also, I think when Hamilton and his engineer, when they spend some more time together, that's going to be a lot more smoother. Radio back and forth. You could hear,
in the back and forth that they were feeling each other out a little bit, right? Like Lewis is I need a little less of this, more of this.
Yeah.
Little frustration.
Yeah.
Which is normal.
Yeah, you could hear it, especially when he's telling him to use the overtake, K1.
Yes.
You could hear that.
What was that? He's use it for practice, and he's I'm not even within a second of the guy.
Yeah, he wanted to get closer. For Lewis, he knew that he needed to get closer. Mm-hmm. I think it was Albon who was in front of him, if I'm not mistaken, when he was in that battle, to use K1, and he needs to get a little closer to him, to make the overtake. Lewis already knows that.
Yep.
And so he's telling him when he should be doing whatever. And Lewis is kind of hey, I'm the one driving the car here.
And I'm Lewis Hamilton.
I know when that's kind of I know when I need to do that, and for Lewis, he's right to do that because, it's like you said, Adam, he's a 7-time world champion. He's been working with these hybrid engines for
10 years
now. Yeah. He knows what he's doing. So just let him do his thing. But again, that's a relationship. It's just going to take time.
Yep.
It's a part of that whole integrating yourself within the team. It all takes time. The steering wheel, like learning all the, like he had to, stay up late trying to figure out the range settings and everything on the wheel and all that. Like it's going to take time. Just going to take time. I had a friend like message me and he was like so upset at Ferrari and he was upset at the engineers and all that. I'm like, just like, this takes time. Like, just give it time. Like this, like he's working with a world-class crew. He is. And it takes time to integrate yourself into a new team. Everyone who sits at home, and they always see, if you see a driver who switches teams or a rookie driver who comes into Formula One, like this stuff takes time.
Yes, it does.
Like you're not just like belting into a car and being like, okay, like here we go. We're going to be fast today. Like it. And then people are like, this guy sucks. It's like, no, he doesn't suck. Like you don't get it. Like it takes time. Like you have so much information coming at you and you have to learn. There is so much stuff to learn. It just, is.
These are some of the most technical beasts out there. Like it's unbelievable what you have to be a good driver, especially now. And
even the relationships.
Oh yeah. Learning like a little Italian too.
No, not even that. Like, not even learning another language. It's learning another engineering language. Yeah. It's also like learning an engineer who doesn't really understand what you like in a car. They don't know exactly they know what Charles Leclerc likes.
Yeah.
They've been working with him for like 5 years.
They have.
6 years, whatever it is. So when you get into a new team, it takes time to build those relationships and having that understanding between the two. So for all the Hamilton fans and Ferrari fans, like, relax. Everything's going to be okay. Like, they got a good car. And that's the other thing. They have a really good car, Adam. Mm-hmm. I think they didn't show their true pace. They had a rough weekend. Mm-hmm. Let's be honest about that.
But a lot of people did.
A lot of people did, yeah.
There was like 6 or 7 drivers that didn't even finish the race, man. Like, I think some teams had some rough weekends. It happens. Yeah. Haas looked like they were dead in the water. Yeah. Clearly not a wet weather car. No. I don't know, Tim. That just very quickly on them. Did they lose some pace over the week or over the winter? What happened? They were nowhere.
Yeah. I think they had a lot of trouble trying to figure out a good, like, Ocon was pretty admittedly upset because of qualifying. I think he'd made some mistakes when he probably shouldn't have. But again, it still didn't really look like the car had a lot of qualifying pace in it.
No, it didn't.
Behrman didn't look comfortable. He made a lot of mistakes. Just a rough weekend for Haas all around.
Just got to put it behind you and keep going, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I don't we still have to wait and see. Like, this is race 1.
Yep.
Like, we're not going to know what these teams really have. Like the Haas right now may struggle, but who knows what it's going to be like in 2-3 races time when they start fine tuning it and refining the car. Like, it takes time.
This is the best part about this time of year. We had, like I said, kick Sauber, Ferrari, more points than Ferrari. Like, that is just not, these are not regular results. 7 of the 10 teams scored points yesterday. 7 of 10.
Adam,
that doesn't happen.
For example, if we go back to last year, right? Bahrain last year, even Australia last year, like, everybody was like, Max is going to smash everyone, like, just crush everyone. First race, what was it? He won by 22 seconds or something.
Yep.
Wow. Right? Amazing. But as the season went along, teams refined their cars. Then what happened?
McLaren got really good.
Who else got really good? Ferrari got really good. Mercedes got really good, right? Like, give these teams like some time.
Alpine looked like they were dead.
Alpine came from like having a fat car to a slim car to a competitive car.
To finishing 6th. Yeah, they were great. Yeah.
You got to give this stuff time. Like, it's race 1. It's race 1.
Yeah.
Start making judgments when we get to race 10. Then
Tim, you can't stop us from making judgments after
I understand.
We will overanalyze everything. Now,
I get it.
Now, let's get to some questions because I think obviously...
Wait. We got to talk about Lance. Come on.
Oh, sorry. Lance is actually next on the list. Lance Stroll, by the way, Fernando Alonso spun out. It looked like Aston could have had double points there, but Lance, like George Russell, sort of just did Lance. And and he quietly put the team in the top 10, got some points, got to feel good, especially after, I remember like the 2022 season, he shows up and he's just, had that bike fall and he's broken, both wrists and still finishes 8th, which was a really gutsy performance as well. But like, he is here, he is healthy, he gets the car. Tim, let's talk about Lance Stroll because, man, he looked good yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, well, he doesn't have the car, but he looked really good.
Yeah, well, you're right. He doesn't have the car, but my point is
doesn't have the car right now.
Yeah.
But I think the car is more driver friendly, which is huge because they haven't had a driver friendly car since
2022.
Yeah, I was going to say like race 1, race
First
2.
6. I think it was like right up until the Miami Grand Prix. They were really in it. Right?
Yeah, well, what was it? 2023, right? Yeah, it was 2023.
Was it 23 or 22? Yeah, whatever it was. Yeah.
23. That year. Now they've got a car that's a little more driver friendly, but it's just not quick. It's just the way it is. And they still need to figure out how to put some downforce on that thing to make it a tiny bit quicker. Solid drive from Lance because of the conditions, how tricky everything was. That was a hard race for every single driver on the grid, and he did a fantastic job. The team made the right calls with the strategy. Really, he did a really nice job. I was on his car radio for some of this thing, and he did a nice job of working with Gary Gannon. So Gary Gannon, he worked with Hulkenberg last year down at Haas. Now he's down at Aston Martin working with Lance, and the two of them really seem to work well together. What was it that you think that that Gary brings to Lance's race? I don't know. This is just from like an outsider's perspective. I don't have the key information on that, but I think he deals with Lance differently than maybe his last engineer did. When Ben was working with Lance, he was good at helping like understand what he wanted and like sort of understanding how to because every driver needs to be handled differently.
Yep.
Right. Not every driver you work with, you're going to deal with the same way. Right. That's just the way it is. I think Gary works really well with Lance. I think that's what we're seeing. I think we saw that all weekend. He was quick all weekend long. He wasn't really off Fernando Alonso at all. I think Fernando qualified him by like a couple hundredths of a second, I think it was. But up until that point, I think Lance had his number. I think that they have a car that can be competitive at some races. I think they need to understand how to unlock a little more performance from it. But yeah, that was a really good drive. That was a great drive from Lance. That's up there. And yeah, we should talk about it. Obviously, being a Canadian driver, Canadian-owned team, but also at the same time, like nobody else really talked about it. I think they should have. This was actually a good performance.
There's a reticence to give Lance credit for when he does well. People are happy to jump on him when he doesn't, but when he does race well, he is completely ignored. I think part of it, Tim, is the fact that his dad owns the team. I think another part of it is the fact that he's a pretty quiet guy, and doesn't have the electric, sparkling personality that some of these guys have. Or maybe he does. He just doesn't show it on the cameras that we see. Again, could be very private. But I think it's really important that you showcase, like, you don't finish sixth in a race like that without being good. You just don't. I mean, you saw the exhaustion of the top three on that podium. Nobody was like, they were celebrating, but were they really celebrating like they do? Or were they like, okay, I need to go home and lie down? Like that was a grueling race. And for Lance to take a car that was not great and is not great and put it there ahead of both Ferraris, it's pretty interesting. Pretty good race.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%, Adam. Yeah.
What do you think? Can they build on anything here, or is it going to be trouble when it's the track conditions are better?
I think for the first few races it's going to be tough.
Yeah,
I think they're going to need like really difficult conditions to have a chance at scoring some points. But again, I mean, they've got Fernando Alonso as well at the same time, and sometimes that guy can pull a miracle lap out of the hat. and put that car where a lot of us think it probably shouldn't be. But again, they have a good, like I keep saying, they have a good driver pairing. And I think if they can utilize their new wind tunnel, really extract what that thing can do, then this car will probably get a little more competitive. I think by the time we probably get to July, we may be talking about a different Aston Martin car, something that's a lot more competitive. Because at the moment, and I said this on the qualifying podcast that we did, Aston Martin put online their new wind tunnel, so they can't use Mercedes wind tunnel anymore because you can't use two of them at once.
Yeah.
So they have to now effectively build 2025 car and 2026 car in the new wind tunnel that they have. State of the art. I think it was James Vowles who even said to us, like, that is now the benchmark. Aston Martin's wind tunnel is now the benchmark of everything. So once they start learning it and understanding it, then, I mean, it's going to be good for them over the long haul.
Right. And really, I mean, as much as, the drivers will and the teams will want to win this year, it is for 2026 and beyond, right? The first Adrian Newey car, the regulation change, like Aston Martin is aiming for a big 26, 27, 28, I would think. As are a lot of these teams. Now, Tim, some of these questions are actually really, really good, but I want to start one with a compliment. From Yotes Fan 1.0. Loved the qualifying podcast, would definitely listen again. How did you find doing the qualifying podcast? And for people that don't know, we do our Thursdays, we do our Mondays, so our pre and our post race. But Tim, you do a quick 15-minute show after qualifying now this year.
Well, it went 15 minutes, turned it into 30.
And people really like that.
I had a lot to say.
You did. People were all over it.
I was like Frank Costanza, I had a lot to say. Now you're all going to hear about it.
Good.
No, it was fun. I think I started recording at like 3:23 in the morning or something.
Yep.
And I started with a lot of energy. I think if you go back and watch it, I think, I don't know. I may not have been able to keep the energy for the entire 30 minutes. I think I started going downhill.
Good. This is the thing. Keep it short because you're going to be pooped. But you enjoy doing it.
I had fun. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. And so people can expect that kind of rundown from Tim every single race weekend, which is great. So from Dursky, what on earth is going on at Ferrari, and how much will Cadillac pay to get Lewis and Charles next season? Good question, right? Good question.
There's no way either of those drivers are leaving Ferrari,
right?
For anything. But I mean, I think Ferrari's got a lot of pace. I really don't think they showed it over the weekend. I think they really struggled with trying to understand the tire. For sure. And I think for Lewis, it was kind of one of, two of those things, right? Understanding what the car was doing with the tire, but then also understanding the car at the same time. There was two things there going on for Lewis. I thought he did well to actually keep it out of the wall, to be perfectly honest with you.
Right. Yes.
He had some moments throughout the weekend where I thought, that's going to be a crash. He was able to save it. So I think, for Ferrari, it's just going to take some time before they really figure things out with the car and refining it a little bit more. But I think that is definitely a championship challenger. The teams, a lot of the teams were even saying that throughout the weekend to me.
Where they were just a good team.
They were like, we're shocked at where Ferrari is right now because we actually, our data that we have on them shows them having a very strong race car. And it's like I said, when we get to Bahrain, I don't think McLaren's going to be that good there. I think they'll be good, right? They'll be good, but I don't think they're going to be out qualifying anybody by 3/10 or whatever. And that's another thing where we saw McLaren in Q3, the final push lap from both Oscar and Lando, which were amazing laps, by the way. First of all, those were two incredible laps. I don't think that car is 3/10 faster than everybody else on the grid. I really don't. I think those are just two amazing laps from two amazing drivers, first of all.
Yeah.
And second of all, I think everybody else is still trying to figure out how to match car with downforce with tire. So I think that's another little thing. But for Ferrari fans, I wouldn't worry. I really do think that we'll start seeing their true pace in 3-4 races time. But some of those radio messages were kind of funny. The one with Leclerc and his engineer was pretty good.
Oh, is it
there's
water?
A leakage of water. It's like, it's all under my seat.
It must be the water. It's like, oh, thanks. Cool, man. Nolan wants to know, how much can we actually learn from a first race like the Aussie GP where the weather turned it into pure chaos? What can we learn from this race?
Nothing.
Okay, cool. Great answer.
No, I don't mean to be rude.
No, that's not rude. If nothing is the answer, nothing.
Honestly, I wouldn't take too much away from Australia.
Okay.
If anything, like I would look at high speed sections in hot temperatures in the dry. So you go back and take a look at that and where everybody is. You kind of get a good idea of like who's got what.
King Fudge says, was that a one-time performance by Kimi Antonelli, or is he actually that good?
Yeah, no, he does look like the real deal. But I think he's a rookie, right? I think there's going to be... We're going to see,
downs.
Yeah, there's going to be incredible races, incredible qualifying. There's going to be disaster. There's going to be crashes. There's going to be a whole mix of things. I think with Antonelli, he has got great car control, though. I will say that.
Right.
Like watching his onboard in the wet, like he has got incredible car control, like that. And that's another thing some drivers have, right? Some drivers have really great car control. Some don't, but are still fast, right? Like I think Alex Albon is like one of those ones who has incredible car control. It just
he does.
Quick hands, man.
And a great defender. Great defender. You have to be in that Williams. Honestly, if Williams ever gets a car that's like top level, like where they're getting pole, good luck getting by Alex Albon.
Yeah.
Like it's over. Like if he has a fast car, it's over. Tim, I think a lot of the questions, really had to do with Ferrari and sort of their disappointments. But the last question I want to ask is from Mike Schmidt. And it said the rookies had a difficult first race, and obviously the conditions played into that. How, as a driver, especially as a rookie, do you reset mentally for the next race? And I think specifically a guy like Isaac Hadjar, what's he going to do? And Liam Lawson, too.
Yeah, I think it is a challenge. Like I think it can be really hard when you're a young rookie driver to put things behind you. The best thing that I was always taught was if I made a mistake, right? Trying to understand why it happened, learn from why it happened, and once you understand that, then you can get right back up to speed.
Okay.
Like that's always the advice that I was always given. I mean, for an example, like if you crash, right? It's kind of like understanding why did you crash and getting to the details of it. And once you understand the details, then you can get back in the car and you can be quick again because you already understand why you learned from why it happened. So you know it won't happen again, or you know what you have to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. I always try to think like Adam, like you're a broadcaster.
Yep.
Let's say when you were younger, did you go back and rewatch your stuff? Did you
oh my God, all the time.
Stuff?
And it was painful. Painful.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
but what
brutal.
did you do?
Like, it's called an air check, right? So you sit down with your boss and you go through each break and your radio breaks and your television breaks. And it's awful because you're like, you could hear it while you're doing it. And the only way you improve is to do a lot of that. And it just sucks to hear. So.
But that's what it's like though. But then what happens?
Eventually, you start to match your performance to what your expectations of yourself and your goals are, right?
100%.
You start to hear a mistake potentially before it happens and then avoid it. And then eventually you're not even thinking about the mistakes. You're just doing your thing and it sounds great.
Exactly. That's the same thing. It's a comparison wise. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You're just competing, you're an athlete, broadcaster, you're doing your thing. For any, I think that works with any athlete, right? It's like sort of the same kind of thing. It's the same thing for a driver. It's like learning from all of the mistakes and then understanding why you did it and then knowing how you won't do it kind of thing moving forward. And that kind of rebuilds your confidence, so to speak.
Got it.
So that's what I would say about the drivers and stuff moving forward, the rookies especially.
Well, Tim, it's been a pleasure. We got our first race recap underway. The season is on, and we got another one coming next week, obviously, because we've got the Chinese Grand Prix up next, and it's happening like right away. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yes, sir.
Thursday, we're going to have a pre-race show. Saturday, Tim will have a really quick post debrief over the over qualifying, and then Monday, of course, a race recap. So Tim, enjoy your week, and let's see what crazy headlines develop, because the drama is back on. There's going to be a lot of interviews done. Maybe Helmut Marko says some more mean things. You never know. It could happen. And we'll see what's going on. But Tim, have a great week, buddy.
All right, you too, man.